The 2025 Car and Driver Lightning Lap results are out. Let's talk about it. 13 different performance cars, ranging from Subarus to Lamborghinis, all duking it out at Virginia International Raceway. And with these cars being driven by journalists opposed to professional racing drivers, I think it gives a really good perspective on just how accessible the performance really is. And that last part is important because I think this year's fastest car will likely surprise you. And just to briefly touch on the track, they are running the VIR Grand Course, which is no joke. In the write-up for this year's Lightning Lap, they compare it to the Nürburgring, and while I think that might be a little bit exaggerated, it isn't totally unfounded. At 4.1 miles, it is definitely on the longer side of American racetracks, but it is dwarfed by the Nürburgring. The track does contain a good amount of elevation change, with some tight technical sections and long open straightaways where in the right car you are seeing 150 miles per hour plus multiple times over the course of one lap. So it is very serious. And one last point before we jump into the results, I mentioned in the intro, one thing that makes this test unique is that it is being conducted by journalists opposed to professional racing drivers. Basically, the whole car and driver staff gets to take turns hot lapping these cars, and they jokingly refer to it as Employee Retention Week. The benefit of this is I think it gives you a perspective on how accessible these cars' performance is. When you're looking at lap times that were set by Jörg Bergmeister or Randy Pobst, the delta between their different lap times in various cars might not be your delta because certain cars are more difficult to drive fast. So we are now going to dive into the results and we're just going to talk through them slowest to quickest. Bringing up the rear this year is the Mazda MX-5 Miata Club, with a time of 3 minutes 15.6 seconds. Now, a few interesting things to point out here. The Miata has kind of become like the traditional benchmark for this test. What makes it a great benchmark is the consistency of the Miata over time and just how prevalent it is. The basic formula of the Miata has not really changed all that much since it rolled out in the 1990s, yet it is still improved its lap time every single year it's been tested at Lightning Lap. The Miata also happens to be the most raced car in the entire world, so it is likely a vehicle that a lot of us have experience with. With a time that is a little bit more than 4 seconds faster than the Miata is the Subaru BRZ TS with a time of 3 minutes 11.1 seconds. The TS, which stands for Tuned by STI, is kind of like the performance package for the BRZ. So you're getting stickier tires, better brakes, slightly revised suspension, but of course, no power increase. And I'll be honest here, with all of these additional performance parts, plus about 40 horsepower over the Miata, I was kind of expecting it to be more than 4 seconds quicker. And guys, quick intermission. If you are enjoying this video, please consider tossing it a like and subscribing to the channel. We are about to close in on 500 subs. Super excited, super grateful, and appreciate all the support. Bigger picture though for the BRZ, this could very well be the last year that we see it compete at Lightning Lap, mainly because it is selling really, really poorly. There's rumors swirling that Subaru is going to discontinue it, and overall, Subaru just has less of an interest in performance cars. Of course, I say that only for the next car on this list to be a Subaru in the form of the WRX TS, again, standing for Tuned by STI. It only manages to eke past the BRZ by about a half second with a time of 3 minutes 10.4 seconds. Now, objectively, this is a car that I should like. All-wheel drive, turbo engine, manual transmission, Recaro seats, it is a good formula. But I have long ranted about how I think this Tuned by STI branding is just kind of tacky and cheap. It is Subaru's attempt to capitalize on the brand cachet of STI without actually having to put in the work to build the car enthusiasts actually want. And to really put a point on my distaste for the WRX TS comes the Hyundai Elantra N, that not only beats the WRX by 4 seconds, but also costs $10,000 less. I think the Elantra N does such a good job at filling the niche that used to be occupied by the WRX. It comes in fun, exciting colors. It has a powerful turbocharged engine mated up to a manual transmission, and most importantly, it is still relatively affordable. And just a fun fact, the Elantra N is the least expensive car competing at this year's Lightning Lap, which helps to make it a pretty good contrast against the car that beat it by roughly about 6 seconds, the Bentley Continental GT Speed. Just to harp on this for 1 second, the Elantra N costs around $35,000, which means that you could literally buy 11 of them and still have money left over compared to the $391,000 that the Bentley Continental GT Speed costs. In the simple metric of dollars to performance, the Bentley easily comes in last place. But of course, with this car, all-out performance is not really the goal. So while the Continental did get a bit more athletic when it began to share its platform with the Panamera, its real superpower is being able to transport you super luxuriously at incredibly high speeds, not necessarily being super at home at a racetrack. Another car that offers a comparable level of performance and could also just as easily be your daily driver is the Hyundai Ioniq 5N. And I know, if you are watching this video, a performance EV crossover is likely not going to be something that gets you excited. But I have long been a fan of the Ioniq 5 because of the way that it looks. When so many of these EV crossovers just kind of look like eggs on wheels, something that takes inspiration from like rally cars of the 1980s and puts that into a modern family EV crossover, I think is pretty cool. And the N version helps to add some legitimate performance with now 640 horsepower. And however you feel about the fake engine noises, I still think you have to commend Hyundai for trying to make this car fun. I think a lot of performance cars nowadays just take themselves way too seriously. And that could be because a lot of them are designed by Germans, just like the Mercedes-AMG GT63. And as we work through this list, right here is a place where we are going to take a massive step forward in terms of performance. This car is going to be shaving off 10 seconds per lap compared to that Ioniq 5N with a time of 2 minutes, 50.3 seconds. And as great as that sounds, it feels like it was only yesterday that Mercedes kind of ruined this car for me. The old AMG GT was relatively lightweight. It had this sleek, beautiful silhouette and was only offered in rear-wheel drive. So what better thing for Mercedes to do than to consolidate it with another model, add a back seat, add 500 pounds, and only offer it with all-wheel drive. Still, as critical as I am being here, this car still does offer a very impressive level of performance and does a good job at being a competitor to the Porsche 911. But for my money, if I had to choose a performance car from one of these luxury first manufacturers, I would select the Cadillac CT5V Blackwing. This car topped the Mercedes by 2.5 seconds, and it cost $65,000 less. At this point, it feels like the Blackwing is a car that comes up anytime I try to make one of these list videos, whether it is one of the last manual cars or just really great horsepower for money. And that's because this car is really the last of a dying breed. With a V8 in a body with 4 doors and a manual transmission, there's really just not that many offerings. And if you're an enthusiast who is looking to buy a car in this segment, I cannot urge you enough. You should buy one of these and force Cadillac to build a million. For the first vehicle that I would consider to be a supercar on this list, we have the McLaren Artura Spider with a time of 2 minutes and 44 seconds. The Artura is kind of like one of the first of this new generation of supercars as everything transitions to hybrid. One thing that did surprise me with the Artura is its price. In my head, I kind of think of these entry-level McLarens. I think back to the 570S. that car started a little over $200,000, which is certainly a lot of money. But with the Artura, things have certainly escalated, with this car as tested having a price just under 400 grand. The good thing for McLaren though is that people are absolutely terrified to own these cars out of warranty, which keeps customers coming back to buy the new exciting thing. So good for them. For our second full EV on this list, we have the Porsche Taycan Turbo GT with a time of 2 minutes 41.8 seconds. So when the Taycan came out in 2019, we knew it was only going to be a matter of time before Porsche came out with a full track-focused version of this car. It is kind of ridiculous to have a 4-door EV that has an optional rear seat delete to save weight. But what might be even more surprising, considering that the Taycan Turbo GT isn't even the fastest car on this list. A vehicle that has a slight electric boost, but really has a naturally aspirated V12 as the star of the show, is the Lamborghini Revuelto. This car shaves about half a second off of that Taycan lap time and really shouldn't need too much introduction. It is the latest iteration of Lamborghini's flagship V12 supercar. While some purists may whine about how this car has gone hybrid, I consider this to be the best possible solution for Lamborghini, where they can keep this car compliant and also keep around that awesome naturally aspirated V12 engine. And unlike some of the other early iterations of the flagship Lamborghini model, the Revuelto is legitimately quick around a racetrack and is the third fastest car at this year's Lightning Lap. That said, it does end up getting bested by a car with less than half the horsepower in the form of the Porsche GT4 RS Manti Edition with a time of 2 minutes 40.9 seconds. Manti Racing is a subsidiary of Porsche that is heavily involved with their motorsport efforts. So basically they take a GT4 RS, which is already an incredibly track-capable car, and add on even more aggressive aerodynamics and even better suspension. There are a lot of new cars on sale today that get referred to as street-legal race cars. Well, the GT4 RS Manti Racing Edition is literally as close as you are going to get. And finally, the fastest car at this year's Lightning Lap is the Lucid Air Sapphire with a time of 2 minutes 40.2 seconds. Whatever your opinion may be on EVs, you have to concede that this is an incredibly impressive car. For a startup automaker to build a luxury sedan that is capable of this level of performance around a racetrack and not just in a straight line is something that we have never seen before. And just the aesthetics here too are so incredibly jarring. You look at the class of cars that this is competing with, all of these Porsches with these crazy wings, the Revuelto with its absurd styling, and the Lucid Air Sapphire is kind of this sleek, reserved luxury car. But before we go, there is one other vehicle that gaps everything here by over 20 seconds, and that would be the Ford Performance Lightning SuperTruck. It is always really, really interesting to put things in perspective with a legitimate race car. And what's working in this truck's favor is one, that 2,000 horsepower, and also the fact that it is capable of 6,000 pounds of downforce at 150 miles per hour. This truck is truly a marvel of engineering. So to zoom out here with a couple of big takeaways. First and foremost, I am thrilled that Car and Driver is still conducting the Lightning Lap in this same format, and especially grateful that they are not paywalling it. But for the cars themselves, I was very surprised at the level of performance offered by the Elantra N, especially considering that it is front-wheel drive. Inversely to that, I'm kind of surprised at the low level of performance, especially considering the price of the Bentley Continental GT Speed. I will say one caveat, they did mention that it had kind of some eco-friendly tires that may have been holding it back. And just to briefly expand on that one price component, It is kind of sad to see inflation has really gotten to the performance car market because a lot of these cars are a lot more expensive than the prior versions were 4 or 5 years ago. It will be interesting to see how this competition shapes up as more and more performance EVs come to market, and I'll also be interested to see how consumers respond to them because so far they have not been particularly good sellers. And most of all, I just look forward to Car and Driver putting on this test again in 2026.